got into vintage audio a year ago, but there's a lot of things he still doesn't know, so he started up a channel on YouTube, and here he is now, the Vintage Newbie. Ba, ba, ba.
Hey gang, welcome to another episode of The Vintage Newbie. My name is Vernon Smith, aka The Vintage Newbie. Isn't it amazing how that worked out? Now, I'm here to talk about vintage stereo equipment. Today, I'm going to be discussing one of my personal favorites, the Realistic STA-90 from Radio Shack. It's not even how any of their commercials went, so don't know why I did that. I will not be taking this out to turn it around to show the back of it, because this cabinet that it's in is heavy as fudge. It is a stereo cabinet, but it is not on wheels, so I cannot rotate it and show the back. And it has got it has got, if I'm going to use proper English, it has a lot of things hooked up to it, so disconnecting everything will be a pain in the patootie. But I do have photographs of the back, so I can show you all the various connections. If you have one of these or want to know how to connect stereo equipment to a receiver, maybe one day I'll do a whole video on how to connect stereo equipment to a receiver. So stay tuned, folks. But for now, we'll get into the front functions. If you are new to the channel, welcome aboard. If you are old to the channel like me, welcome back. Thanks. No problem. Looking good. You're a liar. Sure am. Anywho, if you have been watching previous ones, then you'll remember, of course, that the last episode I discussed the Realistic STA-94, which has a lot of similar functions. But if you're here just because you're looking up STA-90s, then I'll show you all those functions. But if you were here for the STA-84 video and you're like, oh my god, this again. Yeah, oh my god, this again. Because the functions are pretty similar. This is just kind of a beefed up version of that receiver. That one was 25 watts per channel. This one is 45 watts per channel. So it's got even more watts per channel. What does that mean? I don't know. Sounds louder. Something. It has volume and whatever. Don't know what the total harmonic distortion is. Actually, I kind of do. On the STA-84, it was 0.7%. This one ranges between 0.6 and 0.8, depending on if you have it set to stereo or mono. Mono is short for monocular, which means less harmonic distortion. It's mono distorted. That's not true at all, but who cares? Alright, I'm going to stop rambling, not really, and get to the functions on the front of the STA-90. Okay, here is the front of the STA-90. See, I wasn't lying. Now, to turn it on, hit the power button, and it lights up. So cool. In reality, this is more of a darker amber kind of orangey glow, but it's looking more light and yellow. And the video here. So for your speakers, you can switch it to out, which will just play through your headphones. If you want to listen to music on your headphones, but don't want to disturb anyone who may be nearby. Then to listen to your main two speakers, switch it on speaker A. If you have rear speakers, then you would switch on to speakers B. If you want to listen to both A and B, front and rear speakers, then you switch it to A and B. But to do that, make sure you have the right speakers with the right impedance. On the back it says use speakers with an impedance of 8 to 16 ohms. Now, I only have 2 speakers hooked up to the front, and they are these Advent Laureates, which have a nominal impedance of 6 to 8 ohms. So if I were to, say, have these connected and have the baby Advent speakers that I showed in the last video connected, which are also at 6 ohms, then that would be pretty low, and you could burn out your receiver like I did with my Techniques receiver. So I just run I just run one pair of speakers at a time. Or you could go to QVox, and that was Radio Shack's attempt at simulated surround sound. From what I've read, because I haven't really run it on here, they had something that just kind of set the phase of the second set of speakers off slightly, so that it sort of created that surround sound effect. Back to A. Dub out. That is a line out for if you are taping something. It kind of gives you the option of just recording more things, which I don't know. I mean, it's obviously like a bigger jack that plugs into there. I don't know what the other end would be or what it would connect to. I'm guessing it's just some kind of 70s thing for if you're recording a bunch of stuff. Maybe you're recording some studio things. Maybe you got a band and you guys are gonna make it, man. You just gotta record that demo tape. And you might have some stuff going into your tape deck, and you got a couple of mics plugged in. Then you got something coming out through the dub out, because this thing does have 2 separate tape jacks to hook up a tape deck or a reel-to-reel or an 8-track. But I guess if you wanted all 3, then you could use the dub out. Selector switch. You got your aux, which, yeah. That you could plug a tape deck into, but just to play, because it doesn't have the tape out for recording. You could plug in a CD player. You could plug in an iPod Classic. Whoops, well, that didn't really work out because the cord that the microphone's plugged into got a little tangled up. You could plug in an iPod Classic like I do on mine. You could plug in a CD player if you were so inclined to do so, whatever your little heart desires. You could plug it into that jack, but not a turntable. Do not plug a turntable into the God, okay, I gotta research that. I know you can. Don't plug a turntable into an aux, or don't plug something auxiliary into a turntable jack. I don't remember which one it is, but I'll look that up and I'll put that in a video for another day. Phono goes to your turntable if you want to listen to some records. If you want to listen to AM radio to hear about sports radio and weather or anything like that, then you switch it to AM. And look at that little turning signal light comes on. Neato Pachito. If you want to listen to FM, then that one comes on as well. And a neat little feature on this, when you have it on FM or even FM mute, which FM mute is whenever you are turning or dialing between different stations, instead of hearing a of static and radio background noise, FM muting cuts that out, so it'll only make sound when you're hitting the station. And when you hit the station exactly in stereo, the little pointer lights up red. That's pretty cool. That's a thumbs up. That's pretty cool. I like that. See, when you get off of it, oh, back to yellow. But then when you're on it, back on to red. Not red? Red. Then you have your tape monitor switches, which if you are listening to turntable or aux with your CD player or your phone or whatever else, or AM or FM radio, you push a tape selector switch and it'll cut that out and it'll only play what's on your tape deck or your 8-track or your reel-to-reel, but whatever. Tape monitor switch interrupts all of these other functions. This one has 2. Tape monitor 1, tape monitor 2. For me on this, I have one of these has a tape deck hooked up to it. The other one has an 8-track player hooked up to it, which is also an 8-track recorder. Oh my goodness. Your filters, you got your high and low filters, or this way it's low and high filters. Low, push that in, and it cuts out some of the low rumble noise of a turntable that could be picked up by your needle or stylus, depending on how fancy you want to say when you describe the same thing. If you have it like turned up really loud, it could pick up some of the noises, even like when you touch it, like touch the turntable, it could make like, and the low filter cuts that out. The high filter cuts out high noise, like, for example, tape hiss, if you're listening to a tape or an 8-track. Bass gives warmth and volume to your music. Treble gives clarity and highs. Balance keeps you centered and on the chosen path of your life with focus and clarity. No, not on a stereo it doesn't. It just gives you the ability to listen more to your left speaker or right speaker. And I guess my phone is too close to this receiver, which is why it's making little noises occasionally. Now, the cool thing about these little glider knobs here, they're not switches like these, where you hear the clickety clackety clicky. These are smooth and gliding, but whenever you hit center, there's like a little kind of, you can sort of feel that there's like an indentation there to where if you're trying to get these at like absolute center for your bass and treble, like if you just want it to be completely neutral sounding, and the way that the music's intended to sound like the artist wanted it to sound, even though most artists don't really care about that. They just want it to get out so they can get girls and get paid. Whenever you get it right at center, it just kind of feels, you can feel a little tunk to let you know you're at dead center. So that's a neat little function. Mono, if you push it in, it'll come out in mono sound. Even for the stereo, for the radio, you'll see this little light goes off whenever I click mono. And then when you kick it back to stereo. So that, much like the STA-84, and a lot of stereos have this, mono is to where everything comes out the same on both speakers, because that's how things were recorded up until like the 1960s, I believe. But that was made that way because, like old turntables from 100 years ago, or record players, had like those big horn centered things coming out that the sound would come through, or like old radios that just had one speaker in the front, so it's just got that sound. But then for stereo, it's gives you like a more kind of live music feeling, where you can
it kind of opens up the sound stage, man, to where you can hear the drums over here on the right side, and the guitars over here, and the vocals over there, and the horns over here, and you get the point. The musical instruments left or right side. Now, the only drawback to the stereo thing is if you are using the balance and only listening to it on like the right speaker or the left speaker. We'll go with the left speaker this time. How's that sound? Is that fair to the lefties? Lefties get no love. So if you have everything tuned to the left side and it's in stereo as opposed to mono, then you might only hear part of the recordings, and then like maybe the vocals will sound like really, really distant. But if it's in mono, everything comes out the exact same on the right and left speakers. Okay, loudness is like a bass boost, giving you fuller sound when you're at kind of lower volume, which I keep mine at like, I don't know, around 2 or 3, because I've got a wife that works at home. I got a kid. They sleep. I'm up till 3 in the morning, and I don't really want to crank up everything. But sometimes I do, and then I probably don't need the loudness. But you do kind of kick the bass on a little bit more, for my own personal preferences at least. And then finally, you've got this tuner knob, which makes the little light there go red, not red, red, not red, red. Now this thing is pretty heavy. I don't know, it weighs like 20, 30 pounds, maybe less. I don't know. But it's pretty big. This is an 18-inch ruler, so it's about 19 inches. About 6 inches tall. 12 inches deep. And it has a gorgeous... It's got the sticker on here. Genuine walnut veneer. All right, now let's talk price on these things. I saw them on eBay recently for, I don't know, I think between $125 and $300, which is pretty good for, vintage stereo equipment in good shape. Especially because this thing, to me personally, is on par with the Pioneer SX-780, which is an amazing receiver. How do I know that? That's how. So yeah, I love that Pioneer, but I also really love this Realistic STA-90. It sounds amazing. It sounds full. It sounds warm. It sounds, it kicks ass. I listen to it all the time, and I love it. And considering that those Pioneers go for, I don't know, between $600 and let's just say $1,500, at a fraction of the cost, you get something just as cool, just as gorgeous, and sounds just as good. The sound's a little bit, they sound different from each other, but it's different but equal, and I managed to find this one for like $40-$50, something like that, locally. Some guy was getting rid of it, and I'd read so many good things about it that I went and checked it out, and they even threw in a free Realistic cassette deck that needed a lot of work. And this thing needed quite a bit of work as well. It was very dirty and dusty, not only on the outside but also on the inside, which was weird because he had like this like vinyl cover, kind of looks like an old typewriter cover, but it has a clear front, so you could still see the face if you had it on there. But you shouldn't use it while it's on there because this top would cover up the ventilation vents, which you never want to cover up on a stereo. You can't really see it in there, sorry, but these things have vents to allow for airflow.
But this thing was absolutely dirty and dusty on the inside and out. It took me, I think, a solid day of cleaning it, wiping down the outside, taking it apart, going in with like a big soft brush, probably about like 2 inches wide, and carefully brushing everything, hitting it with like a canned air, and then following it up with a vacuum, then getting in there with like Q-tips dipped in 90% isopropyl alcohol, and like the switches were pretty much all staticky, so getting in there with some deoxit D5, which is what you use to deoxidize switches, but only for like clicky switches. Whoops. Sorry, Green Day. Only clicky switches. If you are cleaning glidey switches, then you should use deoxit F5, which looks a little something like this. Hit it. Yeah, and also for the volume knob, use the F5 because it's a glidey one. I don't do it on the tuning knob because I think I read that you really shouldn't. Like, don't really fuck with the tuning stuff, with the radio stuff, because it's really easy to mess it up. At least that's what I think I've read. If you know otherwise, leave something in the comments below. Below me, I said. All right. Yeah, and even after cleaning the switches with various forms of deoxit, it would work some, and I probably had to go back in there 2 or 3 times to clean it again. Yeah, this thing was filthy, but it, even though it was dirty and staticky, the guy like had speakers on him in his truck, and it's no. I brought my baby Advent speakers, and I hooked them up, and it, despite being dirty, it sounded really, really good. So that's why I was like, all right, sure. And then throwing in a tape deck matching Realistic SCT-11. I think the guy was the original owner. Did not have the booklets for it, so that was a little sad. But yeah, cleaned it up. I mean, this thing is gorgeous and it sounds amazing. Yeah, maybe we'll run through the back jack connections as well, but we'll do it briefly. Okay, see you then. Looking at the back of the Realistic STA-90 stereo receiver, you've got 2 outlets. One is unswitched and one is switched. So the unswitched one, if you plug something into it, it's going to stay on and be able to be powered on, no matter whether the receiver is turned on or not. The unswitched one, whatever's plugged into that, will only get power when the receiver is turned on. Next to that, you've got the connections for your speaker wires. You can hook up your A speakers for the front for a 2-channel. You can hook up B speakers or rear speakers. You can have all 4 of them going if you're doing Q-Box, or, as it says, if the impedance is 8 to 16 ohms. After that, you've got your plugs, your RCA jacks for the tape monitor 1, tape monitor 2, auxiliary if you want to plug in your CD player, iPod, iPhone, or what have you. You got your phono jacks, then you got your phono ground, then you've got your FM antenna, and then above that, the big black thing that kind of looks like the barrel of a gun, or even Megatron, is your AM antenna. And that concludes it for the back of the Realistic STA-90. Back to you, Vernon. Okay, so that covers most of it for the Realistic STA-90. I was mistaken. For those of you that care about this, the total harmonic distortion is actually 0.5%. Wow, that's low. And this was made from 1976 to 1980, I think. Or 79, 76, 77, 78, 79. Because there were 2 years where the loudness had that perfect loudness thing that if you push it in, it just blows the hell out of the bass. It sounds just really distorted and muddy and not good. But then the last year or two, which would have been like either 78 or 78 and 79, they'd kind of fix that problem. And this does not have that issue. So this is either a 78 or 79, depending on the year they stopped making them. I saw a video where the guy said it was still 79, but then I also read something online that said 78. So somewhere around there. Anywho, there's also a rumor, a myth, an old wives' tale that these were made by Sansui, who make quality electronics. I don't know why the natural sunlight's coming in here, given this weird orange filter. Or it's just me running it through a filter. Don't I look like I'm 20 now? So yes, the Sansui rumor. Well, I have it on good authority that's false. I've talked to several people who worked for Radio Shack, who sold these things, who worked on them, and no. The Sansui myth is just that, a myth. These were made by Foster Electronics, I believe. Yeah, not Sansui. Sansari. But despite that, they're still amazing receivers. If you find one, I highly recommend picking one up if you have the means. For the Ferris Bueller fans out there. And you know it's a good reference and a good impression if I have to explain what it is. But yeah, if you see one, get it. Like I said, I saw them on eBay for between, I don't know, we'll just say $150 to $300. But then you got to factor in shipping. Or you could get lucky and find one locally for like $40-50. Which, if it's on the same level as a Pioneer SX-780, both have 45 watts per channel, both sound amazing. Mine was in pretty rough shape, and it was certainly not $600. It was a lot less. But $50, I think this one was like between $200 and $300. So that's even like 1/6 of the cost of that. But these things normally go for like $600 to $1,500. $50. Do the math. That'll leave you with like, I don't know, at least $32 difference. But yeah, get it. It's cool. And it's Radio Shack. It keeps me in business. Oh wait, Radio Shack went out of business like 10 years ago. But they're still available online. And I've heard they're opening up retail stores again. But I don't know if that's true. Okay, thanks for tuning in to another wonderful episode of the Vintage Vinyl... Fuck, what's this show called? The Vintage Newbie. Ba, ba, ba.